When my phone rang before dawn one morning and I picked up to hear my nephew's voice, I said, "What is it this time?" "Sorry to wake you, Uncle Danny," he said. "Mike Tyson just beat the shit out of Mitch Green right outside the shop." "Say what now?" I didn't like the sound of that one bit. I threw on some clothes and drove over to the shop. There was a crowd still gathered outside in the summer night, and everybody was buzzing about the unscheduled heavyweight bout they'd gotten to witness up close for free. Luckily, the police hadn't gotten involved just yet. I went straight to my nephew to get the story about what had happened. According to my nephew, the infamous street fight outside the shop between Mike Tyson and Mitch Blood Green started because of kids. Specifically, there was a group of neighborhood kids that I always had hanging out at my shop. These were problem kids. The only kids I wanted around me was problem kids, because what wisdom I had was for problem kids. Many of these kids came from bad situations, neglect, AIDS, addiction. If I could steer them away from the drug game by giving them a place to be, getting them to go on jogs with me, and giving them little errands to run, maybe they'd think twice about being out on the streets all the time like I had been when I was a kid. 2 years before, I picked up that call in the middle of the night. We had all watched Mike go the distance against Mitch Green in front of a sold-out Madison Square Garden. Then Mike was 19 years old, and the world was just starting to understand his powers. He was 20-0, with all but one of those victories coming by way of knockout. He was knocking guys out within minutes. Nobody had seen anything like him. But Mitch was his first real challenge in the ring. Another tough street guy from the Bronx, a brawler, a little older and a few inches taller than Mike. Even though Mitch was higher up in the rankings going into the fight, Mike was positioned to take home $250,000, while Mitch was only guaranteed $30,000 thanks to the promoter of the fight, Don King. When Mitch objected to King's unfair payout, the chairman of the New York State Athletic Commission strong-armed him into fighting anyway. Mitch had no choice, but maintained that Don King had conned him out of a fair payday. Mike won the fight by unanimous decision, but it wasn't a clear victory like his other bouts. In the 8th round, Mitch came back with a barrage of blows that stunned Mike, bringing the crowd to its feet. Mike looked vulnerable for the first time in his young career, and it was a testy fight. There were a couple rounds where you could see them swinging at each other. Long after the bell had rung, there was bad blood. I have a lot of sympathy for Mitch Green. He was a good boxer, and like many before him, he fell into financial ruin after his dealings with Don King. After his loss to Tyson, I see Mitch hanging around Harlem all the time, usually high on angel dust. The kids who stayed upstairs at the shop used to tease him. "Mike Tyson kicked your ass." "He ain't beat me," Mitch would say. "He ain't beat me." On that particular night, the kids were out front, trying to escape the summer heat, when all of a sudden, they saw Mike Tyson pull up in his Rolls Royce and walk into the store with his friend Walter Berry, the basketball player. The kids knew exactly how to get their entertainment for the night. They ran straight to the area where they knew Mitch Green always be at. Sure enough, they found him there and told him, "Mike Tyson kicked your ass, and he around at Dapper Dan's right now." Mike was there to pick up a jacket I'd made him with the words "Don't Believe the Hype" stitched on the back in black block letters, a reference to the popular Public Enemy song of the same title. Later, Mike would hold up that jacket at the press conference to discuss what had happened that night, a cast around his right hand as further proof. But it was because of those kids that Mitch knew Mike was in the shop in the first place. Mitch made his way over to the store with his woman in tow. So Mitch walks in, right? My nephew told me afterward. Didn't say a word at first, just staring at Mike. "You know you ain't beat me," said Mitch. Then he said it again. "You know you ain't beat me." At this point, the tension inside was thick. It was obvious Mike didn't want no trouble. Mike held out his hand and said, "Come on, man. Let's be all right, man. Shake my hand." Mitch just kept staring at him. My nephew redeemed himself from his earlier reefer smoking incident when he thought to grab the store's Polaroid camera and keep it on him while the two professional heavyweights stared each other down across the store. "Come on, man," Mike repeated. "Shake my hand." When Mitch finally shook Mike's hand, everybody let out a sigh of relief. But we all knew Mitch was a head case. He followed Mike outside to his car, repeating, "You know you ain't beat me. You know you ain't beat me." "Come on, man," said Mike, getting irritated. Just as Mike was about to get into his rose, Mitch broke the side mirror clean off of it. "Yo, why you playing me like that?" said Mike, getting in his face. "Why you playing me like that, man?" Mitch made a move at Mike, grabbing for his shirt and then his pockets like he was trying to mug him. Mike's wallet fell to the ground, and that's when Mike snapped, throwing a punch to Mitch's chest that immediately put him on his back. But it was Mike's next punches, when Mitch was lying on the concrete, that did all the damage. My nephew said he never saw the punch land, but he and everyone else heard it. "Ooh," said the kids. While Mike was standing over Mitch, fist cocked, my nephew was snapping pictures of it all with the store camera. With Mitch on the ground, Mike landed one right hand after another that closed up Mitch's left eye and broke his nose, but also left Mike with a hairline fracture. All this information came out in later reports of the fight, but what people don't know is that after Mike knocked him down, he got on top of Mitch and started choking him out. That's when people jumped in and finally got Mike off of him. "I'll kill you and your bitch too," Mike said before driving away in his car and leaving Mitch bloody in the street. Like I said, I have a lot of sympathy for Mitch Green. He had 3 titles, but his struggles with drugs and money sent his life on a downward spiral. He took Tyson to court over the assault, and 9 years later, the court ruled in his favor, awarding him $45,000, which wasn't enough to cover his legal fees. The street fight between Mike Tyson and Mitch Blood Green brought me the most national attention I ever had, including the mention on Monday Night Football that my landlord saw. But once again, it wasn't the kind of attention I wanted. The next day, the story broke in the New York Times with the headline, "Tyson hurts right hand in scuffle with the boxer." They wrote that my shop was a business called Dapper, which Tyson described as an all-night clothing store that caters to performers, where he had gone to pick up an $850 garment. For a lot of people who had no idea who I was or what I was doing, the story must have left more questions than answers. What the hell was Tyson doing shopping for clothes at 4 a.m? What was an all-night clothing store anyway? Who spends $850 for a garment in Harlem? Because of the fascination Mike held for people all over the world, news about the street fight with Mitch Green traveled far and wide, along with the name Dapper Dan. You have to understand Mike Tyson was a cultural phenomenon. Only 22 years old, he was already a boxing legend of mythic strength and speed. There was a Nintendo video game based on him, not as the hero, but as the villain you had to defeat. Mike was undefeated, with half of his opponents never making it out of the first round. And now, the injury to his hand meant that Mike had to postpone an upcoming match. Reporters were calling from South America, Europe, everywhere, and when they learned that I had photos of it all, I became very popular with a few publications. Reporters from New York Post and the New York Daily News gave me $750 each just to see with their own eyes that the pictures I claimed to have actually existed. The quickest $1,500 I ever made. After I showed them the pictures, the bidding war started. Star and the National Enquirer joined in the auction. The offer went up to $150,000 for the photos, but in the end, I refused to sell them. It was a street thing. I didn't want to get Mike in any more trouble. One of the tabloids figured that I wouldn't give them up because I wouldn't hand them over to a white guy. So they flew up some black guy on staff for them in Florida to ask me. That didn't work. Around the same time, Don King set up a meeting with me. He wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to use the photographs to profit off his valuable young commodity. But mostly, it was clear that he was only there to perform for Mike. "Ain't gonna be no extortion," he said to me, playing up the facade of a tough guy protecting his client. I wanted to say, "You bushy-headed nigga, you the only one that's stealing from Mike." But it wasn't my business, so I just let it go. Even a year later, when New York Magazine did a short profile on the shop, one of the first things they mentioned was the Tyson fight, along with the regular daily dramas. It was the thing that kept following me, shining a bright new spotlight on me and the shop. And then the spotlight turned into a searchlight.